nothing ever happened worthwhile in the world without a lot of people struggling very hard for it, and democracy is right on the top of the pile. I promise you, when we go and plant the South African flag amongst the very few flags in the world that can claim to be prosperous democracies, I will feel like Piet van Ketz, who trekked along the South Pole to do exactly that. When I saw those flags flying there, I said that's a symbol of trying to get South Africa's democracy to work well. So we all nyamazela in our own spaces and in our own ways. And thank you very much. Now, unlike Pete, I don't have fabulous pictures of polar bears and mountain gorillas and various other things to show you. I'm just going to try to draw a picture for you to explain what I mean when I say Quo Vadis South Africa, because that's the topic I've been given. Quo Vadis South Africa, where is South Africa going? Which is a hell of a tall order in 20 minutes. So I've had to try and summarize it and tried to depict it in a picture, which will make it a lot easier to do. Now, let me say that business people like policy certainty, and they like to know where things are going, because they have to make decisions and they have to take risks upon which billions hang on a regular basis. And so many businessmen contact me on a regular basis and say, where are things going, just like Alec did today. And I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't say for sure, but my job in politics is to spot trends. I'm quite good at it now after all of these years. I spot trends, and then I see where the forces are driving our society, and then I work out where I would like them to be, and we do whatever we can to move those forces into the direction that we'd like them to be. So, we certainly aren't victims of history, we shape history, but it's good to understand where the forces that are driving the society are leading it, and then it's critical to know where you have to put your lever and position your fulcrum to move it into the right direction. Archimedes said, just give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum in the right place and I'll move the world. Well, in politics, we work all the time on levers and fulcrums. And that is what I'll be talking to you a little bit about today. Now, just a quick bit of background. I was very involved in the front organizations for the ANC in South Africa in the 1980s. By the end of the 1980s, I realized the ANC was a dead loss. It would never bring democracy to South Africa. All of the stuff intervening was important in terms of the stages towards it, but it certainly wasn't the end goal. The ANC was largely an organization of racial nationalists or Marxists. And never have those combinations achieved a successful, prosperous constitutional democracy anywhere in the world, and they never will in the future. And so I broke with that movement in the late 1980s, joined the Democratic Party, and have been working on that particular platform ever since. And since I was elected the leader of the DA in 2007, I've been talking about the realignment of politics. The realignment of politics. Now, what did I mean by that? Many people thought what I meant by that was getting all the opposition parties together to fight the ANC. That is not what I meant by that. Having come from a background in the struggle and been working with many very good people in that struggle in the ANC, but realizing the forces in that party made it impossible that it could lead the charge to democracy, what I meant was facing the fact that the boundaries of political parties already in the mid-2000s had become obsolete, and that we needed a whole realignment to bring together those who believed in constitutionalism and the rule of law, non-racialism, a market-driven economy, and a separation between the party and the state. Those four critical things without which no constitutional democracy can ever work in South Africa, let alone achieve prosperity. So I did as much as I could, and when the EFF came onto the scene, I thought, aha, this is a critically important moment for the realignment of politics in South Africa. And this is where I'm going to draw you a picture, and I hope you can all see what I'm going to draw. It's going to be up on the screen. I arranged this with Biz News. Nothing's too much for them. They said they would actually do it on the screen. It might be too much for me to draw a triangle, but there it is. That is the triangle that I drew at the time. And I said, everybody, this is our moment, and we have to understand the moment, and we have to understand how the forces of politics are shaping South Africa. And so, I'll put the EFF in this corner, because in the first election that they fought in 2014, they got 6%. And that's the EFF, you can see, it's red. There I have the DA. Back then, 22%. Pretty much what we got now. I'll make it a bit bigger for obvious reasons. But in this little corner are a whole lot of smaller parties, the Freedom Front Plus, the UDM, the ACDP and Carter Freedom Party, now also Herman Mashaba, in that corner that I think mostly incline more to us. And I said, now we have a clear contest in South Africa. The DA versus the EFF. That is the fight for South Africa's soul. That is the battle for the future. Here is the ANC. The ANC is this huge mass in the middle. But even in the 1980s, and certainly in the 2000s, or the noughties as they call them, and even now, most especially now, no one can tell you what the ANC stands for. The DA stands for constitutionalism, the rule of law, accountability, non-racialism, which has become a swear word in the new South Africa today, and a range of other things, the market economy, the separation of party and state, all the factors that make for a successful constitutional democracy. The EFF stands for the dead opposite. They stand for a system in which the factors that make for a successful constitutional democracy. The EFF stands for the dead opposite. They stand for a system in which the leader controls the party, and the party controls the state, and the state controls the economy. The recipe for in South Africa. And the critical thing that has to happen in politics is that this huge dominant mass, the single party dominant mass, has to come up. The ANC stands for. The DA stands for constitutionalism, the rule of law, accountability, non-racialism, which has become a swear word in the new South Africa today, and a range of other things, the market economy, the separation of party and state, all the factors that make for a successful constitutional democracy. The EFF stands for the dead opposite. They stand for a system in which the leader controls the party, and the party controls the state, and the state controls the economy. The recipe for totalitarianism. That is where they stand. And that is the choice, real choice facing South Africa. And the critical thing that has to happen in politics is that this huge dominant mass, the single party dominant mass, has to come apart so that people can go where they need to go in terms of the principles and values they stand for, so that the contestation for South Africa's future can become clear and can become real in people's minds. And I said, we now have to go to be a party of government so that we can live out those values, demonstrate those values in action, and show that they work better than this or the inchoate mass that is that. And so we won Cape Town, well, back in 2006 on a 7-party coalition. We won it in Western Cape in 2009 with an overall majority. And today we govern 35 municipalities in 7 provinces. And the choice is between that and that. And as Cyril Ramaphosa said in his State of the Nation address, he said, there is a battle on for the soul of South Africa. And what he meant was this battle. And what he didn't say, but what he knows is fundamentally true, is that that battle is raging within the ANC, and that he is, with a few other people, virtually alone in trying to push things in a direction of constitutionalism and the rule of law. And there was a crucial moment in that State of the Nation address where he looked up at our young mayor, 35-year-old Jordan Hill Lewis, sitting up there in the mayor's box in our city hall, that pristine city hall. You can't go to another city centre in the whole of South Africa and find a city hall in such perfect condition, absolutely perfect condition, beautifully resplendent in the colours of the flag. And he looked up and he said, "Thank you, Mayor, for making this possible." Because Parliament had burnt down, and just as when Parliament was burning down in January, Cyril Ramaphosa stood in front of it and said, "At least one city in South Africa works." And that is the consequence of that value set planted in government and entrenched election after election. Fire service is there before the fire alarm even goes off. And all of the litany of ghastly political failures and administrative failures and management failures that the report on that fire unearthed. And so Cyril Ramaphosa looks to the young mayor and says, "Thank you very much for making it possible that we could do that." And what he's basically saying is, and this is the truth, I am trapped in my own party. I am trapped in my own party. I can't move because the entire ANC is an interlocking network of criminal syndicates. Many, many years ago, and I'm not exaggerating, that's not hyperbole, that is true. Many years ago, Kgalema Motlanthe, then Deputy President, said, every single tender issued by the state has been designed and issued to make somebody in the ANC rich. And the contestation around access to those tenders and contracts is the war that results in all the political assassinations we are seeing and that now hardly even make the news, for example, in Mpumalanga and other places. So that is the major contestation, and that is the major battle. I'll take 1 minute to say that I took the DA as far as I thought I could take it in 2014, when this outcome happened. And I thought the next step to move this line, because that must be our goal, to move this line to there, and to get all of the people who share that value set into the same party. Because remember, our political boundaries of our parties are obsolete. There are constitutionalists and people who believe in that value set in this party, and there are people who believe in that value set in this party. And that has to all come apart so that this contestation can be seen for what it is. And I left the DA with this analysis firmly in place, and I thought, great, we're going to take it forward. And in 2016, we had that breakthrough election where we broke out of the Western Cape and into the metros in the rest of South Africa. And the tragedy of that was that instead of taking the one metro that we could get a clear coalition majority with people who shared our values, we were so determined, or certainly not me, I had a huge fight about it in the party, but there were people in Gauteng who said, we can only do it, we can only take out the ANC if we work with the EFF. And instead of having that contestation, what did we do? We went with the EFF to govern Johannesburg and to govern Tshwane. Fatal, fatal strategic mistake. And when you make strategic mistakes in politics, they come back to bite you big time. And so instead of doing what we were going to do to the ANC, eat them away on this side and have the EFF eat them away on that side, what happened to us was Cyril started eating away at the DA on this side, and the right wing started eating away at the DA on that side. Fatal mistake, undermined the entire long-term strategy that I spent so much time doing. I had to decide, do I try and get the DA on the right path again, or do I just say, I've had my turn, goodbye? And I suppose a little bit like Kim van Ketz, I said to my husband, listen, shall I take on this battle again? And he said, are you mad? And then the next morning he said, well, I know you. I think you better do that, otherwise you will never forgive yourself. You must at least try and give it another chance. And so, of course, when I did come back and won that election internally for the chair of the Federal Council in 2019, all the people who wanted this alignment left. Nobody analyzed it properly. They wanted to leave. Herman Mashaba still today believes that we have to work with the EFF in order to beat the ANC. That is the core ideological difference that we have. I believe that we have to work with this section, and we're working with them behind the scenes all the time, to achieve a new majority that will be based on the values of constitutionalism, the rule of law, and non-racialism, all the things I've been speaking about, and that this grouping must be there. So that is the ideological difference, and this is where South Africa can be quo vadis. If we get our analysis right, if we get our moves right, and when those catalytic moments come in politics that can never be predicted, like that uprising in KwaZulu-Natal last year, we use that very much to drive this line of politics here and to make common cause with the constitutionalists and build a new majority. That is why of the State of the Nation address, when Cyril Ramaphosa came along and said, I pin my colors to the flag of reform, fundamental reform, the most important sentence in that speech. There's a battle for the soul of South Africa. Number one, absolutely right, that is what that battle is. Number two, business creates jobs and not government. In that way, he was declaring war on this group. And you remember how they heckled him in that speech. So the realignment is happening, and there are many, many scenarios that are being done at the moment. This is a document of Yaki Salira and the Institute of Strategic Studies. People do scenarios all the time. What are the possible futures for South Africa? I'm not going to go through them now because the clock is ticking. But the most likely one, he says too, is one called Bafana Bafana. I won't explain to you what that means. It means trotting along in the third league, which we don't want to do. But the critical thing about this last election was that the ANC fell under 50%, a huge watershed. And the ANC, another premise of mine, cannot fix itself. It is too trapped in corruption, too compromised, and everybody has something on somebody else. And that factionalism and corruption absolutely permeates the South African police force that is almost a wholly owned subsidiary of criminal syndicates in South Africa. And again, I'm not exaggerating. That is not a political exaggeration. That is the truth. And so the best case outcome for bending the arc on the Bafana Bafana model is for the DA to do as well as we can in the 2024 election. Because as the ANC falls below 50%, it is going to look around for coalition partners. It's going to have to. And the stronger we are, the more comfort we give to the constitutionalists in the ANC. It's absurd to argue, as Peter Bruce did, that if you vote for the ANC, you're supporting Cyril Ramaphosa. You're supporting the total inchoate mass of corruption, because no one knows which individual in the ANC you voted for. The best way to save the constitutionalists in the ANC is to get the party that stands foursquare behind those values elected. So that when the ANC falls below 50%, as it does, the bulk of the critical mass that provides a safe alternative is the one that stands for our values. And that is what we have to get right. Now, the last thing I want to say in the 2 minutes I have left is this. Cyril Ramaphosa is likely to be re-elected at the end of the year at the ANC's conference. What happens at their policy congress, I don't know, in June. We'll have to see where the balance of forces lies, but I think it probably will lie more on this side of the triangle. However, Cyril will be elected, but the person to watch is who is elected as his deputy. That is the critical contest in this end of the year ANC conference. If it's Mabuza, we've got a lot to worry about. The deputy usually becomes the president, and Mabuza spends most of his time in Russia, and it's not because he's sick. It's because he knows that that is where the money comes from to fund the entire corrupt network, to buy all the votes that they do in ANC congresses. They raise hundreds of millions, and that money is used to pay for votes. And in the last election, Mpumalanga had the biggest delegation, and Mabuza made a calculation. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is not going to cut it. Cyril has a better chance of becoming president. I then have a better chance of becoming president after him if I pin my colors to his mast, and he took that entire Mpumalanga delegation, all paid for, behind Cyril. But he's not supporting Cyril. He's corrupt, totally corrupt, and he belongs ideologically there. But he says going in that slipstream is much more strategic to make himself the president. Other options are Ronald Lamola. We can talk a little bit about this when my time runs out. Paul Mashatile, Thandi Modise, various others. Not Lindiwe Sisulu. She hasn't got enough heft in the ANC itself. So that is where South Africa can quo vadis. We can build a new majority around the values of the Constitution. It is going to be like rowing single-handedly across the Atlantic, but at least we've got a team and we can do it. That is the pathway. That is how we have to achieve it. And we have to pull those levers as much as we can. And my job is to try and make sure that enough voters get it so that they do the right thing. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome guys back. And of course, this particular episode looks like as if the South African, politics is something that is so delicate, fragile, and of course very, very much complex to be able to expound on. But looks like it's a game of wits. It's like just like what we have the Game of Thrones, if you've ever watched that. So based on my argument that if you've watched and my assumptions that you watched that, South Africa and also the South Africans, the blacks in South Africa, it's a big game. It's a game of wits that they're playing here in this particular case, given the fact that now that Helen Zille has, this particular video, I had to post it up because there is something to learn. And if you listened all the way from the beginning up to this very end here, you are a special person that you must have realized that, you see, there is those who stand for, some structural, constitution aspects that are being followed up to date. And there are those also who want to, the totalitarianism, if that one is really right, like the EFF and also there are that. And then the ANC is caught up in between the hard and the rock place, between the rock and the hard place, and in which that it cannot maybe ascertain accentuate what exactly it needs or what even it wants for South Africa. Now that they are a GNU, it's a unity government, what is the way forward for the South Africans? Is this really a total solution, or is still the game of wits which is being played underground? But that one and the rest, we keep on watching, and time of course will tell. And I'll keep on updating you and trying to let you know that, you see what, the fabrics of South Africa, they dictate that one. So who is to blame and what needs to be done? If you feel me, do drop in your comments on the comment section and let me know what exactly you think. Your comments would be appreciated. Cheers till we meet in the next upload.